For decades, no one noticed it. But now the internet can't stop talking about the huge mistake hiding in Blazing Saddles. The 1974 comedy classic is packed with outrageous humor and unforgettable scenes, yet one glaring blooper somehow slipped through every edit. It's so obvious once you see it, you'll wonder how it stayed hidden for nearly half a century. After all these years, this shocking discovery is changing how fans watch the film forever. Number 1. Chaos, farts, and accidental genius. Few scenes in cinematic history have caused as much laughter or as much controversy as the campfire scene in Blazing Saddles. In just a few chaotic minutes of cowboys eating beans and audibly passing gas, Mel Brooks shattered decades of Hollywood taboos. Until 1974, no major film had ever included a flatulence gag with full, unapologetic sound. It was something so ordinary in real life and yet so forbidden on screen that when Brooks did it, audiences erupted, not just with laughter but with shock. This wasn't just toilet humor, it was an act of rebellion. The setup is deceptively simple. A group of weary cowboys sits around a campfire under the stars, quietly eating plates of beans after a long day. Then, one by one, they begin to pass gas, loudly, rhythmically, and without shame. The sound builds into a kind of absurd symphony, echoing through the desert night. The audience howled. Test screenings were so loud with laughter that viewers couldn't even hear the dialogue. Brooks, ever the provocateur, saw that as an opportunity. Instead of cutting the sound effects, he added more. It became the most infamous sequence in the film, and one of the most quoted moments in comedy history. But behind the laughter was a deeper purpose. For decades, Hollywood's cowboys had been portrayed as noble, spotless symbols of American heroism. Stoic men who rode into sunsets without ever sweating, cursing, or using a toilet. Brooks wanted to tear down that mythology. He wanted to show cowboys not as icons carved from marble, but as real human men, tired, dirty, crude, and full of beans. In his own words, he was bringing the West back down to earth. The Warner Brothers executives, however, were horrified. They called the campfire scene vulgar, crude, and unfit for respectable audiences. They begged Brooks to remove it, warning him that the film could be banned in certain markets. But Brooks refused to budge. He understood exactly what he was doing. The flatulence scene wasn't just a cheap gag, it was a cultural revolt. It said that comedy could talk about anything, even the things polite society pretended didn't exist. When the film finally hit theaters, the audience's reaction proved Brooks right. The scene became a sensation, redefined what mainstream comedy could get away with, and paved the way for generations of filmmakers to follow. And the chaos didn't end there. In the film's climactic battle, where the story explodes from the fictional town of Rock Ridge onto the real Warner Brothers studio lot, something happened that perfectly summed up the film's unpredictable spirit. As dozens of stuntmen and extras brawled through fake saloons and Hollywood streets, a real pedestrian, an ordinary man who happened to be walking nearby, accidentally wandered into the shot. Instead of reshooting, Brooks kept it in. The random bystander became an accidental part of film history, captured forever in a moment of pure cinematic anarchy. Number 2. The cast changed the game. Richard Pryor should have been the star of Blazing Saddles. He didn't just help write the jokes. He was the film's voice, its pulse, its edge. Pryor co-wrote the screenplay alongside Mel Brooks and a team of boundary-pushing writers, shaping the tone that made the movie revolutionary. It was Pryor who gave Sheriff Bart his wit, his self-awareness, and his quiet strength in the face of ignorance. But the same fiery, unpredictable energy that made Pryor a genius also made Hollywood nervous. Warner Brothers, terrified of his reputation for substance abuse, refused to insure him. Without insurance, they couldn't cast him. It was a heartbreaking loss and one of the great Hollywood what-ifs. Yet out of that decision came a stroke of cinematic fate. Cleavin Little, a classically trained Broadway actor with a razor-sharp sense of timing, stepped into the role. Where Pryor might have played Bart with explosive fire, Little brought something equally powerful: grace under pressure. His cool, detached delivery gave the satire a sophisticated edge. He didn't need to shout or make speeches. His calmness itself became a form of rebellion. Surrounded by a town full of fools, Bart never loses composure. That quiet confidence made him the center of gravity in a film spinning with chaos. Brooks later admitted that Little's performance gave Blazing Saddles a layer of elegance it might not have had otherwise. The same kind of chaos surrounded the casting of the film's other legendary duo. Gene Wilder wasn't the first choice for the role of the washed-up gunslinger known as the Waco Kid. That part originally went to Gig Young, a respected actor whose career had been derailed by alcoholism. On the very first day of shooting, Young showed up visibly ill and collapsed on set. Brooks, desperate to keep production moving, made a frantic call to Wilder, who had worked with him on The Producers and shared his warped sense of humor. Wilder got on a plane and started filming almost immediately. No time for rehearsal, no time for second-guessing. And that's how one of the most unlikely performances in comedy history was born. Wilder's Waco Kid, with his half-lidded eyes and melancholy grin, became the perfect counterpoint to Cleavin Little's steady charm. His calm, almost surreal oddness made the character unforgettable. Wilder played him like a ghost haunting his own legend, a once great gunslinger now reduced to a weary philosopher, delivering absurd lines with Zen-like serenity. Together, Little and Wilder formed one of the most perfect comedic duos ever captured on film. Then there was Harvey Korman, as the gloriously pompous villain Hedley Lamar, a greedy, scheming bureaucrat who believed himself to be a genius and was perpetually infuriated that no one took him seriously. Korman played the role with Shakespearean commitment, making Lamar both ridiculous and menacing at once. His name, a sly play on real-life actress Hedy Lamarr, earned the film a legal threat when the star herself threatened to sue over the gag. Brooks reportedly sent her a cheeky note apologizing and thanking her for the inspiration, and who could forget Alex Karras, the former football player who forever earned his place in comedy history with one of the most insane moments in film: punching a horse. Karras, cast as the dim-witted but lovable brute Mongo, turned what could have been a throwaway gag into an iconic symbol of the film's absurdity. When Mongo walks into town and literally knocks out a horse with one punch, audiences gasped and then howled. The scene was so bizarre, so unexpected, that it instantly entered pop culture history. Number 3. Fighting the studio. When Warner Brothers first saw Blazing Saddles, the screening room fell into stunned silence. Executives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Nobody laughed. Nobody clapped. What they had just witnessed didn't look like a comedy. It looked to them like career suicide. The film was loud, vulgar, politically explosive, and gleefully offensive. It mocked racism, religion, sex, politics, and Hollywood itself, the kind of thing that could destroy reputations in a single weekend. When the lights came up, one executive reportedly muttered, "This is too vulgar for America." Another warned that if it were released, it would end careers. But Mel Brooks wasn't panicking. He had something the studio didn't expect: final cut authority. Thanks to the unusual deal he had negotiated earlier in his career, Warner Brothers legally could not alter or censor a single frame of Blazing Saddles without his approval. For a filmmaker who thrived on chaos and irreverence, it was the ultimate power move. Brooks had designed a film that deliberately broke every rule, and now no one could stop him from showing it exactly as he intended. Still, Warner Brothers didn't give up easily. They considered burying the film quietly, releasing it only in a handful of theaters with little marketing, hoping it would disappear without attracting attention. They expected protests, boycotts, and embarrassment. But Brooks believed in the movie, not because it was safe, but because it was true to its insanity. He had made a satire that said what few dared to say, that racism, hypocrisy, and false heroism were not just relics of the Old West. They were part of America's present. Then, something remarkable happened. When Blazing Saddles finally reached audiences, they didn't just laugh, they roared. People lined up around the block. Viewers who were used to polished, family-friendly comedies couldn't believe what they were seeing. Cowboys farting around a campfire, a black sheriff outsmarting a town full of bigots, and a movie that literally tore down the walls of Hollywood itself. It was anarchic, fearless, and brilliant. What the executives thought would be a disaster turned into a phenomenon. Word of mouth spread faster than any studio campaign could have managed. Theaters that had planned to screen it for 1 week extended the run indefinitely. Crowds came back again and again, bringing friends who had to see it to believe it. By the end of 1974, Blazing Saddles had earned over $100 million, a staggering figure for a comedy in that era, especially one made on a modest budget. It became one of the highest-grossing films in Warner Brothers history and remains one of the most successful comedies ever made. Number 4, An Insane Experiment. When Blazing Saddles stormed into theaters in 1974, audiences were stunned. Some laughed until they cried. Others walked out in disbelief. It was crude, it was outrageous, and it was unlike anything Hollywood had ever dared to show. The film tore apart the cowboy myth that had defined American cinema for decades and made fun of racism not from the sidelines, but right to its face. Its chaotic, fourth-wall-breaking finale threw every rule of storytelling out the window, and somehow, despite studio panic, censorship threats, and near-constant controversy, it worked. But how did this insane experiment even get made? To understand the brilliance and madness of Blazing Saddles, you have to understand the world it rode into. The America of 1974 was bitter and bruised. The Vietnam War had ended not in victory, but humiliation. The Watergate scandal had shattered public trust, with President Nixon teetering on the edge of resignation. The civil rights movement had changed laws but not hearts. Racism still lingered in every corner of American life, and Hollywood was no exception. Westerns, once the pride of American cinema, still told the same story. The noble white hero saving civilization from the savages. It was a myth America wanted to believe in, even as reality told a different story. That's where Mel Brooks came in, not just to parody the Western, but to blow it up. Brooks was already famous for his wild, self-aware comedies like The Producers, but Blazing Saddles was something deeper. On the surface, it looked like slapstick nonsense, fart jokes, silly gunfights, and pratfalls. Underneath, it was a cultural time bomb. The story was deceptively simple. A corrupt land developer convinces the governor to appoint a black sheriff in a small western town, hoping the racist townsfolk will abandon it. But the plan backfires spectacularly when the new sheriff, Bart, played by Cleavon Little, turns out to be smarter, sharper, and far more competent than anyone expected. What begins as a racist setup transforms into a full-blown rebellion, both against the villains and the society that allowed them to exist. Number 5. The Dirty Joke. The most shocking moment in Blazing Saddles isn't in the movie at all. It never made it past the editing room, a deleted scene so audacious that even Mel Brooks, a man famous for breaking every cinematic taboo imaginable, couldn't bring himself to include it. This wasn't a blooper, prank, or behind-the-scenes joke. It was a scripted moment that went too far, even for a film that made flatulence, racial slurs, and fourth-wall-breaking chaos part of its comedic arsenal. And here's the real shocker. Most people didn't even know it existed until decades later. In this lost scene, the sultry cabaret singer Lily Von Stupp, played by the brilliant Madeline Kahn, shares a quiet, candle-lit dinner with Sheriff Bart, Cleavon Little. The mood is seductive, a rare pause in a film otherwise built on absurdity and noise. Then as the lights dim, Lily leans closer and whispers, "Oh, is it true what they say about you people?" It's a racially loaded question, delivered in that breathy, comic, melodramatic tone Khan mastered so well. And then comes Bart's punchline, one of the sharpest jokes Mel Brooks ever cut. "I hate to disillusion you, ma'am, but you're sucking on my arm." In a single beat, the scene would have shattered expectations. It poked fun at a racial stereotype that Hollywood had avoided addressing directly for decades, twisting it into a moment of absurd honesty. The joke worked on multiple levels, acknowledging the stereotype, disarming it through humor, and giving Bart the final word. It was bold, it was subversive, and it might have been too perfect. But Brooks, after shooting it, decided to pull the plug. The line never appeared in the final cut. Decades later, he admitted in interviews, "Maybe I got scared." That moment of hesitation, rare for someone as fearless as Brooks, says everything about just how close Blazing Saddles came to pushing comedy past its outermost limits. Even a director who gleefully mocked racism, sexism, and the Hollywood system itself knew there were lines that might make audiences recoil instead of laugh. This decision wasn't about censorship from the studio. It came from Brooks himself. He worried that the joke, while funny, might overshadow the film's deeper message. Blazing Saddles wasn't just about shock value. It was about dismantling prejudice by exposing how ridiculous it looked under the spotlight of comedy. Including that deleted moment might have shifted the balance, turning one sharp exchange into a controversy that drowned out everything else. Still, the scene's absence tells us something important about the tightrope Brooks walked. He wasn't just writing gags, he was conducting a dangerous social experiment. Every joke in Blazing Saddles walked a line between offensive and illuminating. Brooks' genius wasn't in his willingness to shock. It was in his ability to make audiences laugh and think about why they were laughing. He used humor as a mirror, forcing America to look at its ugliest assumptions and see how foolish they really were. What do you think about the serious errors in Blazing Saddles? Leave us your comments in the section below. We hope you have found this helpful video. Don't forget to leave a like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you like it. Thank you for watching this and see you in the next videos. Goodbye.